I stared at my phone, the text message burning into my vision like acid. Don't you dare wear that silly costume. My father had always been direct, but this cut deeper than any wound I'd received in service. Standing alone in the church annex in my dress whites, 4 stars newly pinned to my shoulders, I felt a strange mix of anger and heartbreak. The voicemail from my brother Garrett played next. It's just a Halloween outfit, bro. Nobody's impressed. 20 years of service, 3 combat deployments, and countless sacrifices. Yet my own family saw only a costume. As Amanda approached in her white dress, concern in her eyes, I made a silent promise to myself. Today would be different. Today, they would finally see me. Growing up in Westfield, Massachusetts meant living in the shadow of Thompson Construction. My father, Harold Thompson, had built his business from nothing into one of the largest commercial contractors in New England. Our dinner conversations revolved around blueprints, profit margins, and the eventual transition of the company to the next generation. That next generation was supposed to be me. Duke, pay attention, my father would say whenever he caught me daydreaming during his business lectures. This will all be yours someday. But while he saw scaffolding and concrete foundations, I saw battleships and aircraft carriers. My bedroom wasn't filled with architectural drawings, but with model warships, military history books, and pictures of naval commanders. Every dollar of allowance went toward building my fleet of miniature vessels that sailed across my bedroom shelves. When are you going to outgrow these toys? Dad would ask, disappointment heavy in his voice. You're wasting your time on fantasies when you should be learning the business. Mom would try to soften these moments. He's just a boy, Harold. Let him have his interests. He's my son, and he needs to start acting like it, Dad would respond, the conversation always ending the same way. By 16, the conflict came to its first real breaking point. The high school counselor had called about junior ROTC opportunities, and I'd signed up without hesitation. When the permission slip appeared on the kitchen counter, Dad's reaction was nuclear. Absolutely not, he roared, tearing the paper in half. No son of mine is playing soldier when there's real work to be done. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I defied him. With Mom's signature forged in shaking teenage handwriting, I joined JROTC and found the structure and purpose I'd been craving. Each uniform inspection, each drill competition, each leadership challenge felt right in a way that nothing at Thompson Construction ever had. Garrett, 2 years younger, watched this conflict with calculating eyes. Where I pushed back, he leaned in, becoming Dad's shadow at 14. Duke's missing out, he would say at dinner, showing Dad his sketches for a new commercial development. This business stuff is fascinating. The approving clap on Garrett's shoulder should have hurt me, but instead, it offered relief. Maybe if Garrett became the heir apparent, I could forge my own path. When my acceptance letter to the Naval Academy arrived senior year, Mom cried tears of happiness, while Dad refused to even touch the envelope. You're throwing away everything I built for you, he said, his voice cold. Don't expect me at this so-called ceremony. True to his word, when I accepted my appointment at Annapolis, scanning the crowd revealed only Mom's face, Garrett conspicuously absent as well. What should have been one of the proudest days of my life carried an undercurrent of abandonment. Then came the discovery that changed everything. While packing for Academy, I found a shoebox in Mom's closet containing medals, naval insignia, and faded photographs of a young sailor, my grandfather, Jack Thompson. According to the citation accompanying a Navy Cross, he had died saving 3 fellow sailors when their destroyer was attacked in the Pacific. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? I asked Mom, the pieces suddenly shifting into place. Her eyes watered as she took the box. Your father was only 8 when it happened. He grew up without a dad because of the Navy. He's never forgiven the military for taking his father away. She squeezed my hand. But Jack would be so proud of you, Duke. So proud. The revelation didn't heal the rift with my father, but it helped me understand it. As I packed my bags for Annapolis, I carried not just my own dreams, but also the unspoken legacy of a grandfather I'd never known. The Naval Academy forged me in ways my father could never understand. The pre-dawn runs along the Severn River, the unforgiving academic schedule, The constant pressure to excel, these were the foundations upon which I built my new life. With each passing semester, Westfield and Thompson construction became more distant memories. My commissioning day brought only my mother in attendance once again. "Your father sends his," she began, then stopped herself. "He's very busy with the Westbrook project." "It's okay, Mom," I said, squeezing her hand. "I understand," but understanding didn't make the absence any less painful. As my classmates introduced their proud families to our instructors, I stood alone but for Mom, the gap beside us conspicuous. My first deployment aboard the USS Lincoln marked the true beginning of my naval identity. As an ensign, I was the lowest of the low, yet even this position carried more purpose and responsibility than anything my father had offered at the family business. At sea, rank and respect were earned through competence and character, not inherited through bloodlines. Thompson, my first CO, would bark, "Plot that intercept course again. Faster this time." The challenges were relentless, but so was my determination. By my third year of service, I'd earned an early promotion to lieutenant junior grade and selection for advanced tactical training. During shore leave in Norfolk, I met Amanda Davis, a Navy physician completing her residency at the base hospital. Unlike the awkward conversations with civilians who couldn't understand my lifestyle, Amanda and I connected immediately. "So you're the wonderkind lieutenant everyone's talking about," she said during our first date at a small Italian restaurant near the water. "Hardly," I laughed, immediately comfortable with her direct approach, just trying not to crash any multi-million-dollar government property. Her smile lit something inside me I hadn't known was dark. "Well, don't. My schedule's already full enough without adding your emergency surgery." 3 dates later, I knew she was different. She understood the demands of service, the missed holidays, the sudden deployments. More importantly, she saw beyond the uniform to the person wearing it. My next deployment took me to the South China Sea during increasing tensions in the region. As officer of the deck during a routine patrol, I was first to spot the distress signals from a capsized fishing vessel. What followed tested everything I'd learned: coordinating the rescue operation, maintaining ship security in contested waters, and managing the diplomatic complexities of aiding foreign nationals. 16 fishermen were saved that night, and my after-action report caught the attention of Fleet Command. The commendation came with orders to Naval War College and an early promotion track. Through it all, my attempts to bridge the gap with my family continued to falter. Each leave would start with hope. Perhaps this achievement, this medal, this promotion, would finally earn my father's respect. "So they gave you another piece of ribbon," he'd say, barely glancing at my dress uniform. "I suppose that's nice. But when are you going to do something real, Duke? Something that builds rather than destroys?" Each visit ended the same way, with tension thick enough to cut and Garrett's smug expression as he detailed his growing responsibilities at Thompson Construction. "Dad's grooming me to take over completely next year," Garrett announced during one particularly difficult Thanksgiving dinner. "The Thompson legacy will continue after all." The barb was aimed directly at me, but I refused to take the bait. "That's great, Garrett. I'm happy for you both." Mom's eyes conveyed her silent apology across the cranberry sauce. As my 30s approached, my career accelerated in ways even I hadn't anticipated. The rescue operation had marked me for leadership, and subsequent successful deployments built a reputation that preceded me. The promotion to commander came years ahead of schedule, followed improbably by captain before 40. When I called my father to share the news of making captain, his response was predictably dismissive. "Captain of what exactly? A glorified taxi service for aircraft?" Meanwhile, your brother just secured the contract for the new Springfield Municipal Complex. $20 million, Duke. Real achievement. I wanted to explain that commanding a destroyer involved managing hundreds of sailors and billions in equipment, responsible for national security missions that I couldn't even describe to him. Instead, I swallowed my frustration. "Congratulations to Garrett. That's impressive." During this period, Amanda and I had managed to maintain our relationship despite dual military career challenges. Now both stationed in Washington, D.C., we finally had stability enough to consider a future together. My proposal wasn't elaborate, a simple question asked on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial at sunset. Her yes echoed across the National Mall, setting in motion plans that would eventually collide with my family's expectations. "I'd like a military wedding," Amanda said as we discussed options. "Not overly formal, but honoring the service that brought us together." "Are you sure?" I asked, thinking of my father's inevitable reaction. "We could do something more traditional." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Duke Thompson. I'm marrying a naval officer. I want to see him in his dress whites, not some rented tuxedo. Be proud of who you are." Those words stayed with me as I made the call to inform my parents about our engagement. Mom was thrilled, asking immediately about dates and venues. Dad's response was merely, "Well, I suppose it's about time. Your mother will want to attend, of course." What he didn't know, what no one outside my immediate chain of command knew, was that a far more significant professional event was developing simultaneously. My performance reviews and operational success had placed me on the short list for flag rank. At 40, I was being considered for Rear Admiral, becoming one of the youngest admirals in modern naval history. The promotion board's decision arrived in a classified envelope, not just approved for Rear Admiral, but in an unprecedented move. An accelerated promotion to 4-star Admiral was authorized, pending final approval that would coincide almost exactly with my wedding date. I decided to keep this development private. If my family couldn't respect the accomplishments they already knew about, revealing this historic promotion would seem like desperate validation seeking. The stars would speak for themselves when the time came. "Military weddings have certain traditions," I explained to my father over the phone, 6 months before the ceremony. "The sword arch, the uniform dress code for service members, sounds like a lot of unnecessary pageantry to me," he interrupted. "Your brother's wedding was elegant and simple. No costumes, no swords, just a tasteful celebration." I bit back my instinctive defense. "It's important to Amanda and me. Her father served. Most of our friends are military." Fine, he sighed. "We'll attend your little parade. But Thompson Construction will help with the costs, and that means I get some input." His financial offer surprised me, the first gesture of support he'd shown in years. Perhaps this was his way of extending an olive branch. "That's generous, Dad. Thank you. I should have known better." The first sign of trouble came when my mother called, her voice carefully neutral. "Duke, dear, did you tell your father you're just a boat driver?" "What?" "No, of course not. He was talking to Uncle Steve about the wedding, and he mentioned you drive boats for the Navy." Steve seemed confused, given your rank. The mischaracterization was deliberate, I knew. Dad had always minimized my service this way. "Mom, I command a destroyer with a crew of 315 sailors. I don't drive boats." "I know, sweetheart. I just thought you should know what he's saying." The next incident came during a rare visit home to discuss wedding arrangements. Garrett cornered me in Dad's study, a tumbler of scotch loosening his tongue. "So, the sailor boy returns." He smirked, leaning against Dad's desk. "Got your costume all pressed and ready?" "It's a uniform, Garrett, not a costume. Same thing, isn't it? Playing dress up and pretending to be important." He took another swig. "Dad's only going along with this military circus because Mom insisted. He thinks it's ridiculous." "And what do you think?" I asked, though I already knew. "I think you've been running away from responsibility for 20 years while I've been here building something real." His eyes narrowed. "Hey, I've got a great idea for your reception. We could make it Halloween-themed since you'll already be in costume. Might as well lean into it, right?" I left the study before saying something I'd regret. 3 weeks before the wedding, Amanda and I met with the wedding planner in Washington to finalize details. My phone buzzed with a text from Admiral Williamson, my commanding officer and mentor. "Need to discuss your wedding. My office, 9 o'clock tomorrow." Concerned, I arrived promptly, wondering if there was an issue with my leave request. "Thompson," Williamson said, unusual formality in his voice. "I understand you're having a military wedding." "Yes, sir. Small ceremony, but with traditional elements." His serious expression broke into a rare smile. "The officers and sailors under your previous commands have approached me with a request. They want to organize an honor guard for your ceremony. Not just token representation, we're talking about significant numbers." "Sir?" "Duke, you may not realize the impact you've had. That rescue operation in the South China Sea? Those sailors haven't forgotten. The crisis response off Somalia? The junior officers you've mentored, who now command their own ships, they want to be there. Emotion tightened my throat. I'm honored, sir. Truly. There's more, he continued. Your promotion to 4-star has been expedited. The ceremony will happen 1 week before your wedding. You'll be wearing those stars when you say your vows. I left his office walking several inches taller, only to have my phone bring me crashing back to earth. A text from my father. Called the caterer. Told them to prepare for 50 additional guests. Business associates I want to impress. They're excited to meet my son who's finally coming to his senses and joining the real world. Confused, I called him immediately. Dad, what do you mean coming to my senses? Well, this military phase is obviously winding down if you're getting married and settling down. My associates are eager to meet the future VP of Thompson Construction. The assumption was so absurd I nearly laughed. Dad, I'm not leaving the Navy. In fact, I've just been promoted again. A dismissive snort came through the phone. Duke, enough with the games. You can't play sailor forever. It's time to grow up and join the family business. I'm a naval officer, Dad. That is my career. That is my life. We'll discuss this at the rehearsal dinner, he said, then hung up. Later that evening, Amanda found me staring at wedding invitations, lost in thought. Everything okay? She asked, settling beside me on our apartment sofa. My father has apparently told his business associates I'm leaving the service to join the family business after our wedding. She took my hand. And how does Admiral Thompson feel about that career change? Despite everything, she made me smile. Admiral Thompson thinks his father is delusional. Perhaps it's time to be completely clear with him, she suggested. No more avoiding confrontation to keep the peace. She was right. 20 years of sidestepping conflict had only reinforced my father's dismissive attitude. The wedding, our wedding, deserved better than to be used as my father's business networking opportunity under false pretenses. The stage was set for confrontation when I discovered Garrett had taken it upon himself to improve our wedding programs. The proof he sent showed all military references removed, replaced with bland corporate language about family legacies and business futures. What is this? I demanded over the phone. Just making some adjustments, Garrett replied casually. Dad thought the military stuff was a bit much. We're trying to strike a more appropriate tone for the Thompson family image. Something in me snapped. It's not your wedding to adjust, Garrett. Change it back. All of it. Don't get dramatic. It's just a program. It's my life you're erasing. Change it back. The tension escalated throughout the week, culminating in a showdown I never wanted but could no longer avoid. The night before our rehearsal dinner, Amanda and I arrived at my parents' house in Westfield for what should have been a warm family gathering. Instead, the atmosphere was charged with unspoken conflict from the moment we stepped through the door. There he is, my father announced from his position by the fireplace, tumbler of bourbon in hand. The sailing man returns to shore. Mom hurried forward to embrace us both, her smile tight with anxiety. Duke, Amanda, we're so glad you could come early. Dinner's almost ready. Garrett leaned against the wall, smirking. Nice of you to take shore leave for your own wedding, bro. I chose to ignore the barb, focusing instead on introducing Amanda to extended family members she hadn't yet met. The evening progressed with strained pleasantries until my father cleared his throat during dessert. Now, about tomorrow's rehearsal and the ceremony, he began, setting down his fork with deliberate precision. I've been thinking about this uniform situation. My spine stiffened. What about it? It seems inappropriate for a Thompson family event. Our guests are expecting something traditional, professional. I think a proper suit would be more fitting. The room fell silent. Even Garrett seemed uncomfortable with the directness of the attack. It's a military wedding, Dad, I replied evenly. The uniform is traditional, for sailors, perhaps. But you're a Thompson first. My business associates are expecting. I don't care what your business associates are expecting, I interrupted, surprising myself with my firmness. This is our wedding, not a Thompson construction networking event. His face darkened. After everything I've contributed financially, Harold. My mother cut in. her voice unusually sharp. "This is Duke and Amanda's day, not yours." Dad turned to her in surprise. "Lisa, you know image matters in our circle. All this military pageantry is excessive and, frankly, embarrassing." "Embarrassing?" The word hung in the air like a live grenade. 20 years of service is embarrassing to you? 20 years of playing war games on boats when you could have been building something meaningful," my father replied. "The filter of civility completely gone now. While you've been sailing around collecting ribbons, your brother has been here, working 60-hour weeks, creating jobs, contributing to the community." Garrett sat straighter, basking in the praise. "Those ribbons represent real achievements," Amanda interjected, her physician's composure slipping. "Lives saved, security maintained, sacrifices made." "Sacrifices?" my father scoffed. "Like missing your grandfather's funeral because you couldn't be bothered to come home from your little boat?" The low blow struck hard. "My ship was deployed in the Persian Gulf during active operations. I couldn't just leave." "You could have if it actually mattered to you," Garrett added, piling on. "But playing with your toy boats was more important than family." Something inside me was building toward explosion when my mother suddenly slammed her hand on the table, startling everyone. "Enough." Her voice carried an authority I'd rarely heard. "Harold Thompson, you will not speak to our son this way in my house. Not tonight. Not ever again." My father blinked in surprise. "Lisa, no. You've had your say for 20 years, and I've been quiet too long." She turned to Garrett. "And you, encouraging this division between brothers when you should know better." She reached beside her chair and lifted a wooden box I'd never seen before. "Duke, your father has never told you the whole truth about your grandfather." "Lisa, don't," my father warned, but she continued. "Your grandfather, Jack Thompson, was not just any sailor. He was a decorated naval officer who gave his life saving his entire unit during an attack. He received the Navy Cross posthumously." She opened the box, revealing medals I recognized instantly from my years of service. "Your father was 8 years old when the Navy officers came to deliver these and the news of his death." My father's face had gone pale, his knuckles white around his glass. "Dad lost his father because of the Navy," she continued, her eyes on me but her words clearly meant for everyone. "And instead of processing that grief, he turned it into resentment. When you showed interest in the military, all he could see was losing you the same way. You had no right to keep this from me," I said quietly to my father. "What good would it have done?" He responded, his voice hollow. "Make you even more determined to follow the same path that killed him? That left me without a father?" In that moment, I saw clearly what had been obscured for decades. My father's antagonism wasn't about the business or family legacy. It was about fear disguised as contempt, fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear dressed up as disapproval. "Dad, I'm not going to die in service," I said. "Gentler now." "You can't promise that," he replied, and for the first time, I heard the frightened 8-year-old boy beneath the successful businessman's exterior. "No, I can't. But I can promise that running from his legacy, or mine, won't heal what happened." The conversation continued late into the night, sometimes heated, sometimes subdued. Truths emerged that had been buried for decades. My father admitted his company was struggling, making Garrett's role more crucial than ever. Garrett confessed to years of resentment over living in the shadow of my military achievements, while simultaneously being told by our father that those achievements were meaningless. Around midnight, exhausted from emotional excavation, I stepped outside onto the back porch for air. Amanda followed a few minutes later, wrapping her arms around me from behind. "That was intense," she murmured against my shoulder. 20 years of unspoken words tend to come out that way," I replied, turning to face her. "Maybe we should elope. Vegas, tomorrow. No uniforms, no family drama." She smiled and shook her head. "No way, sailor. I'm marrying a naval officer in full dress whites, with all the honors he's earned." I kissed her forehead. "Even if it means more Thompson family fireworks? Especially then. Some things are worth fighting for." When we returned inside, the house was quiet except for my mother, sitting alone in the kitchen with a cup of tea. "Your father and brother have gone to bed," she said, her expression weary but relieved. I think everyone needed to say those things, painful as they were. "Will he still come tomorrow?" I asked. "Wild horses couldn't keep him away," she assured me. "He may not show it well, but beneath all that bluster, he does love you, Duke." "I know, Mom. In his way." As Amanda and I prepared to leave for our hotel, my mother pressed something into my hand, a small velvet box. "This belonged to your grandfather. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment. I think that moment is now." Inside was a Navy Cross medal, identical to the one in the wooden box but worn around the edges from handling. "He carried this one during his service," she explained. "The newer one came with his posthumous award. This one has been places, seen things, like you." The weight of it in my palm felt simultaneously foreign and familiar, like receiving a piece of myself I hadn't known was missing. We left the house uncertain of what the following day would bring, but somehow lighter for having lanced decades-old wounds, allowing them to finally begin healing. Back at the hotel, a surprise awaited. In the lobby, a group of 6 men in civilian clothes stood when we entered, their posture instantly recognizable to me even without uniforms. "Captain Rodriguez?" I identified my former executive officer from the Lincoln. "Chief Warner?" "What are you all doing here?" Rodriguez stepped forward with a grin. "You didn't think we'd miss Admiral Thompson's wedding, did you, sir? The Nebraska contingent just arrived. Texas boys get in tomorrow morning. California crew is already upstairs." "Admiral?" Amanda questioned beside me. Rodriguez's eyes widened. "Oh shit, sorry, sir. Was that still under wraps?" I laughed, tension draining from my shoulders as I looked at these men, my real brothers, forged in service rather than blood. "It's fine. Officially happens next week, but word travels fast." "4 stars fast, sir," Chief Warner added with a wink. As we continued to our room, Amanda squeezed my hand. "4 stars, huh? Were you planning to mention that before the ceremony?" "Thought I'd surprise you," I admitted. "Promotion happens 3 days before the wedding." "Well, Admiral Thompson," she said, emphasizing the title with obvious pride, "I can't wait to see your father's face when he realizes exactly what kind of boat driver his son has become." Dawn broke over Westfield with golden light streaming through hotel curtains. I had been awake for hours, uniform pressed and ready, staring at the 4 stars that would soon rest on my shoulders. Amanda had stayed in a separate room, traditional superstition we'd both insisted on, despite everything else. My phone buzzed with incoming messages. First, from my father, "Don't you dare wear that silly costume." Then from Garrett, "It's just a Halloween outfit, bro. Nobody's impressed." I should have felt anger, but instead, a strange calm settled over me. Today marked not just my marriage to Amanda, but a final reckoning with the shadow that had followed me since childhood. Whatever happened at the ceremony, I would no longer carry the weight of seeking approval that would never come. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Admiral Williamson stood in the hallway, immaculate in his dress whites. "Permission to enter, Admiral?" he asked formally. "Permission granted, sir," I replied, stepping aside. Once inside, Williamson dropped the formality, clapping me on the shoulder. "Big day, Duke. 2 big days, actually. Youngest 4-star in 30 years yesterday. Marriage today. Still processing both, sir." He nodded toward my phone on the bedside table. "Family coming around?" "Not exactly." I showed him the messages. Williamson's expression hardened. "Their loss, Thompson. But I should tell you your wedding just got a lot more complicated." "How so?" "Remember that honor guard I mentioned?" Word spread. "We've got 154 service members here. Every ship you've served on is represented. 3 former secretaries of the Navy. Your rescue operation survivors sent representatives. That fishing vessel captain from the South China Sea flew in from Taiwan." My throat tightened. "Sir, I never expected." "That's the thing about true leadership, Thompson. The impact goes far beyond what you can see." He checked his watch. "The cars will be here in an hour. Best get those stars on your shoulders." After Williamson left, I stood before the mirror, no longer the 16-year-old boy defying his father to join JROTC, but a man who had earned every inch of gold braid on his uniform. The 4 stars represented not just personal achievement but the collective effort of every sailor who had served under my command. My grandfather's worn Navy Cross sat on the dresser, a tangible connection to a legacy I hadn't known was mine. I pinned it inside my uniform jacket, close to my heart but hidden from view. This one piece was just for me. As I prepared to leave, a final text message arrived from my mother. "Your grandfather would be so proud today, and so am I. More than words can say." At least one Thompson understood. The ride to the chapel passed in contemplative silence. The wedding coordinator met me at the side entrance, eyes widening at the sight of my full dress uniform with 4 stars. "Admiral Thompson, we've had a significant change in attendance," she said nervously. "The church is at capacity. Military personnel are lined up outside." "Are my parents and brother here?" I asked, finding that I still cared despite everything. "They arrived 10 minutes ago." "Your father seemed surprised by the turnout." I smiled. "Good. Let's not keep them waiting." In the small antechamber outside the main chapel, I found Admiral Williamson waiting with a group of senior officers. "Protocol for 4-star entry is traditionally announced," Williamson said quietly. "Given yesterday's promotion, we should follow tradition. Unless you'd prefer to keep it low-key?" I thought of 20 years of diminishment, of silly costumes and toy boats, of a father who couldn't see value in anything beyond his own limited world. "Follow protocol, Admiral," I decided. "Full honors." Williamson nodded approvingly. "Good man. Amanda's ready when you are." Stepping into position, I took a deep breath. The chapel doors opened, revealing pews filled with uniforms from every branch of service. Near the front sat my father, mother, and Garrett, their expressions varying from confusion to awe at the assembled military presence. As I began my walk down the aisle, Admiral Williamson's voice rang out clear and commanding. "Admiral on deck." In perfect unison, 154 service members snapped to attention with a thunderous response. Sir." I caught my father's reaction in my peripheral vision, his face draining of color, as he registered the 4 stars on my shoulders, and the response of the assembled military personnel. Garrett's mouth literally hung open. Standing tall, I continued my march toward the altar where Amanda would soon join me. For the first time in my life, I felt no need for my father's approval. I had earned something far more valuable: the respect of those who truly understood the meaning of service, sacrifice, and leadership. The ceremony began moments later, Amanda radiant as she walked toward me on her father's arm. Her smile, proud and unwavering, was all the validation I needed. The wedding ceremony proceeded with dignity and tradition. Amanda and I exchanged vows beneath the watchful eyes of 154 servicemen and women who stood as silent witnesses to our commitment. The familiar rhythms of the service grounded me despite the tension still emanating from the front pew where my family Saturday. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the chapel erupted in applause. As we turned to face our guests for the first time as a married couple, I noticed an unexpected addition at the back of the chapel. The Secretary of the Navy himself had slipped in during the ceremony, standing respectfully in the rear. The traditional sword arch formed outside the chapel doors, 6 of my closest naval colleagues creating the canopy of steel under which Amanda and I would take our first steps as a married couple. My father watched the proceedings with an unreadable expression, while Garrett seemed to be reassessing everything he thought he knew about his brother. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chaplain announced, "I present to you Admiral and Dr. Thompson." As we proceeded toward the arch, I heard my father's voice, pitched low but still audible. "Admiral? That can't be right." An older officer standing nearby turned to him. 4-star Admiral Thompson is the youngest in 3 decades to achieve that rank. His South China Sea operation changed maritime rescue protocol throughout the Pacific Fleet. The sword arch ceremony was executed with perfect precision. As we passed through, the last pair of officers lowered their swords, symbolically barring our path. "The toll to pass is 1 kiss," announced Captain Rodriguez with a grin. After paying our toll with a kiss, we continued toward the reception hall adjacent to the chapel. The formal receiving line allowed us to greet each guest individually, a process that would take considerable time given the turnout. Midway through, my father and brother approached, my mother a half step behind them, The moment had weight, hanging between us like an unexploded ordnance. "Duke," my father said, his voice oddly constrained. That is. "Congratulations to you both." "Thank you, Dad," I replied, searching his face for some sign of recognition, not of me as his son, but of me as the man I had become. "4 stars, he said, glancing at my shoulders. I didn't realize that was significant. "Highest rank possible, Mr. Thompson," Amanda supplied smoothly. "Only a handful of officers achieve it. Like your father," my mother added pointedly. Garrett stepped forward then, his usual smirk replaced by something approaching genuine curiosity. "So, all these people work for you?" "With me," I corrected. "We served together, but they all stood when you walked in. And that announcement, protocol for flag officers," I explained. "Tradition and respect for the rank, not necessarily the person." A young lieutenant approached, saluting sharply. "Excuse me, Admiral. The reception is prepared when you're ready, sir." "Thank you, Lieutenant. We'll proceed shortly." My father watched this exchange with new eyes, perhaps finally beginning to understand that my costume represented real authority and responsibility. "We should continue greeting guests," Amanda suggested tactfully. "We'll see you inside." As my family moved on, Amanda squeezed my hand. "Phase 1 of Operation Open Eyes seems to be working. Let's not declare victory yet," I cautioned. "The Thompson men are stubborn creatures." The reception began with traditional military elements, seamlessly integrated with civilian celebration. The ceremonial cake-cutting used my dress sword, an act that visibly fascinated my father's business associates, who had clearly been told a very different story about my career. During dinner, I noticed my father deep in conversation with Admiral Williamson. Their discussion appeared intense, but not combative, a promising sign. When the time came for speeches, Garrett approached the microphone first, his prepared notes visibly different from what he ultimately said. "I had a whole speech planned about childhood memories and brotherly rivalry," he began, glancing in my direction. "But today has been educational. I've realized there's a lot about my brother I never understood or took the time to learn." A murmur ran through the crowd. "Duke and I grew up in the same house but took very different paths. I always thought my path was the meaningful one, because it was the one our father valued." Garrett paused, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Today, seeing all of you here, people who have served with him, whose lives he's impacted, I'm beginning to think I might have been wrong about a few things." He raised his glass. "To Duke and Amanda, may your life together be as impressive as the legacy you've already built." The toast was sincere in a way I hadn't heard from my brother in decades. As Garrett returned to his seat, our eyes met, and something unspoken passed between us, not quite reconciliation, but an opening where there had been only walls. Admiral Williamson spoke next, sharing stories of my career that even Amanda hadn't heard: the midnight navigation through a typhoon to reach a stranded humanitarian mission, the diplomatic crisis averted through careful negotiation during heightened tensions with a foreign navy. Throughout his speech, I watched my father's face. The calculation was visible each story, forcing him to recalibrate his understanding of what I actually did in the service he had dismissed for so long. When it came time for my speech, I stood, quieting the room with my presence rather than my voice, a skill learned through years of command. "Today is about beginnings," I started, looking at Amanda. "But it's also about recognition of the journey that brought us here, and the people who shaped that journey." I acknowledged my naval colleagues, Amanda's family, and finally turned to my own family, to my mother, who always saw me clearly and supported my path even when it wasn't the expected one. "Thank you for keeping faith." She wiped away a tear, smiling proudly. To my brother Garrett, who reminded me today that it's never too late to see someone with fresh eyes. "I look forward to getting to know you again as the men we've become, not just the boys we were." Garrett nodded, uncharacteristically solemn. "And to my father," I continued, the room growing particularly quiet. "A man who built something from nothing through determination and vision. Those same qualities, though perhaps applied differently, have guided my own career. We may have walked separate paths, but the foundations of character that made those journeys possible came from the same source." I raised my glass. To family, both the one we're born to and the one we create through shared purpose and commitment, may we always have the wisdom to value both. As I concluded, an aide approached with a laptop. "Sir, the video messages are ready when you are." This was a surprise arranged by Amanda and my fellow officers' video greetings from service members around the world who couldn't attend in person. As the lights dimmed and the projection screen lowered, my father leaned forward in his seat, his businessman's curiosity piqued. The first message came from the captain of the fishing vessel we'd rescued in the South China Sea. His family gathered around him as he expressed gratitude in halting English. "Because of Admiral Thompson, I see my children grow up, my grandchildren born. Thank you for my life." More messages followed, junior officers now commanding their own ships, crediting my mentorship. A humanitarian mission director recounting how our naval support had saved thousands after a tsunami. Foreign naval officers speaking of collaboration during joint exercises. With each testimony, I watched my father's expression shift further from skepticism toward something approaching wonder. These weren't abstract achievements or meaningless ribbons, they were tangible impacts on real lives. As the lights came up, I found my father staring at me as if seeing a stranger, or perhaps, for the first time, truly seeing his son. The reception continued, but something fundamental had changed. When the band played the Navy hymn, tradition dictating that all naval personnel stand at attention, my father rose as well, a small gesture, but significant in its acknowledgement. Later, as Amanda and I circulated among guests, I spotted my father standing alone, examining the wall of photographs documenting my naval career that Amanda had arranged as a surprise. His attention was fixed on an image of me on the bridge of my destroyer, the responsibility of command evident in my stance. Our eyes met across the room, and in that moment, I saw what I had sought for 20 years, not just acknowledgement, but the beginnings of understanding. The reception continued late into the evening, traditional elements giving way to celebration as formality relaxed. Amanda and I had just finished our first dance when I noticed my father speaking with the Secretary of the Navy, their conversation animated but not tense. "Should we rescue him?" Amanda asked, following my gaze. "Let's see how he navigates diplomatic waters for a change," I replied with a smile. As the night progressed, an unexpected moment arose. My father approached where I stood, with a group of junior officers, clearing his throat awkwardly. "Duke, might I have a word?" Privately, we stepped onto the terrace overlooking the gardens, the spring evening pleasantly cool. For a moment, neither of us spoke, decades of misunderstanding hanging between us. "I found something," he finally said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Your mother gave it to me earlier." He withdrew my grandfather's Navy Cross, the duplicate to the one I carried hidden inside my uniform jacket. "She told me you have the other one," he continued. "His service medal." "Yes," I confirmed. "She gave it to me last night." My father turned the medal over in his hands, his expression distant. "When I was 8, 2 officers in uniforms like yours came to our door. They brought this box and told my mother my father wasn't coming home." The admission held more vulnerability than I'd ever heard from him. For years afterward, I'd wait by the window, convinced they'd made a mistake, that he'd walk up the driveway any day. He swallowed hard. "When you started talking about joining the Navy, all I could see was you walking away, never coming back, just like him." "Dad, let me finish," he interrupted gently. "I was wrong, Duke. Not just about your career, but about how I handled my fear. I turned it into contempt because that was easier than admitting I was terrified of losing you the same way." He gestured toward the reception hall. "All those people in there, they know a version of you I never allowed myself to see. My own son. And I couldn't recognize your accomplishments because I was too blinded by the past." "It's not too late," I offered, surprising myself with how much I still wanted his understanding after all these years. "Maybe not," he agreed. "Your mother suggested something I'd like to propose. Would you consider visiting Thompson Construction next month? Not to join the business," he clarified quickly, "but to speak to our management team about leadership. God knows we could use some fresh perspective, especially after the Springfield project challenges." The invitation represented more than a speaking engagement. It was an acknowledgement that I had something valuable to offer from my own path. "I'd be honored," I said simply. He nodded, relief visible in the set of his shoulders. "I have something else for you. A wedding gift, though not exactly traditional." From his other pocket, he produced a small, worn photograph. A young naval officer in World War II dress blues, his stance eerily similar to my own. "My father," he explained unnecessarily. "Your grandfather. This is the only photo I kept after he died. Couldn't look at the others, but couldn't quite let this one go either." He pressed it into my hand. "He would have been proud today. And," he added, voice rough with emotion, "so am I, son. Finally, and without reservation, I am so very proud." The words I'd waited a lifetime to hear nearly undid me. We embraced awkwardly at first, then with the genuine connection that had eluded us for decades. When we returned to the reception, Amanda caught my eye questioningly. I nodded slightly, and her smile could have lit the entire room. The remainder of the evening took on a different quality, lighter, more genuine. Garrett engaged in lengthy conversation with several of my junior officers, his natural charisma finding common ground where I would have least expected it. My father danced with my mother, their movements suggesting a renewal of their own connection. As the night drew to a close, tradition called for one final military element, the ceremonial sword arch through which Amanda and I would exit. The honor guard assembled outside, their swords gleaming under the stars. To my surprise, my father approached as we prepared to leave. "Duke, Amanda," he said, unusually formal. "I want to thank you for including us today, despite everything. This ceremony, these traditions, I understand now, they're not just pageantry. They mean something. They've meant something all along." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small pin, the honorable discharge emblem, that would have been given to family when my grandfather died. "I found this in your mother's box of your grandfather's things. I'd like to wear it, if that's appropriate, to honor him, and you." "Very appropriate," I confirmed, helping him attach it to his lapel. The gesture, small but profound, represented a seismic shift in our family's foundation. As the master of ceremonies called for our departure, we moved toward the sword arch for the final time. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced Admiral Williamson, "please join me in bidding farewell to Admiral and Dr. Thompson." As we passed beneath the raised swords, I caught a final glimpse of my family, my mother radiant with joy, Garrett standing taller somehow, and my father, hand resting on my grandfather's service pin, finally at peace with the legacy he'd fought for so long. 1 year later, I stood in uniform at Naval Station Norfolk, preparing to address the graduating class of Officer Candidate School. In the audience sat my father, the Navy service pin now a permanent fixture on his lapel, my brother Garrett, whose construction company had recently secured a contract building base housing, and Amanda, her hand resting on the slight curve of her belly, where our first child grew. The night before, my father had joined us for dinner, bringing a gift, a meticulously crafted cradle with naval motifs carved into the headboard and footboard. "Thought my grandchild should sleep surrounded by family history," he'd explained. "The good parts, anyway." As I approached the podium to address the next generation of naval officers, I carried with me not just the weight of 4 stars on my shoulders, but the understanding that the strongest vessels, be they ships or families, are those that can navigate rough waters and still find their way home. The wounds of decades had not vanished, but they had transformed into something different, scars that mark not just pain, but healing. Through honest confrontation and the courage to see beyond our own perspectives, we had charted a new course together. Different paths, same family, different careers, shared values. In the end, the uniform my father once called a costume had revealed its true power not in the authority it represented, but in the bridges it helped build across the chasms of misunderstanding that had separated us for too long. Have you ever had family members misunderstand or dismiss your life choices until they saw the respect you commanded from others? Comment below and share your experience. If this story of family reconciliation touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to heal family wounds. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the greatest victories aren't won through confrontation, but through persistent dedication to your authentic path.